ARG, Not Another Podcast, hosted by William May, in which the author finds himself embroiled in a podcast about book publishing.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of ARG, Not Another Podcast with William May. I'm William May. I feel like today is going to be a pretty significant episode in some ways, or at least one that I feel very, I feel like it was an important thing for us to bring up. So a little while back, I received an email. It was an invitation to share my chapbook, Blaze Without Burning, with a large community of readers and to take part in various online events, including book discussions and interviews. Now, it should be obvious why this felt like an enormous opportunity, and the comments about my writing that were sprinkled throughout the missive suggested the person writing it had some familiarity with my work. It felt like this could be the start of something possibly important. So I asked Denise Marza, who you know from this podcast, to reach out and learn more about the opportunity. Almost immediately, we realized something was off when the response boiled down to a request for hundreds of dollars to, quote, secure a spot. It didn't take very much research to confirm our sense that this was a scam. Now, in the time since, I've received so many more emails with exciting offers very similar to that, some claiming to represent groups on social media sites like Facebook or Goodreads, others purporting to come straight from one or another best-selling author who just happened across my book and is eager to invite me to join their own private writers group. Now, of course, I'm not the only person to have noticed this. In recent months, I've seen writers discussing the topic in many different forums. I've seen articles in magazines, pieces online, comments on social media. This has been growing. It's become commonplace to a somewhat shocking degree, and it seems like it's really only going to get worse at the moment, unfortunately. Now, I'm new to all this. I only had my first chapbook come out last year, and this is all stuff that's, just beginning to happen to me. I'm aware about scams in general, and in the writing space in particular, but this is a very aggressive, targeted type of fraud, and it feels like something worth discussing more than what I could say from my limited experience. Fortunately, there are people out there who have made it their mission to uncover the scams plaguing the literary community, and even more fortunately, we are very lucky to have one of those special individuals here with us today. Let me introduce you all to author Victoria Strauss, who, beyond writing 9 books of her own across a variety of genres and age ranges, is the co-founder with Ann Crispin of Writer Beware, a publishing industry watchdog group sponsored by the Science Fiction Fantasy Writers Association, which provides information and warnings about many of the scams and schemes that threaten writers in our day. Victoria, it's a real pleasure to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
So before we get into everything, I know you're. Let's just get to know you a little bit. I know you're an author yourself. You have a lot of, I gather, 2 series of fantasy books that you've written.
I have 2 duologies for adult readers, and 5 books actually for young adults. So,
okay.
As you said, I write across a variety of genres and age groups, mostly fantasy, some historical. So that's me.
And I gather that you're in Amherst, Massachusetts.
I am. Very lovely community in Massachusetts where I went to high school and then moved away and then came back again a few years later.
Yeah. So anyway, I know that you've been working with Writer Beware for how long have you guys been around now?
Well, it's kind of embarrassing to say, but almost 30 years now. We started up in 1998. And at that time, scams were mostly analog,
Right.
recharging literary agents, vanity publishers, fake editing schemes. And we sincerely believe that by putting out enough warnings and information, we could kind of eliminate the problem and put ourselves out of business. But that did not prove to be the case. Writing scams have remained incredibly prevalent, and just in the last few years, they've been absolutely turbocharged by AI.
Yeah.
And this latest wave of scams that you were describing is the latest example of that. Kind of before that started to happen, most most of the most prevalent scams were focused on self-published authors. But this new wave of scams kind of targets everybody. So it's sort of broken containment into the wider literary community, which kind of didn't pay that much attention
Right.
in the past, and particularly with all the impersonation scams now. Literary agents and publishers are paying a lot more attention to the scam issue than they used to.
Have you heard any like particularly shocking stories from someone that you were like, they should really know better kind of things? I mean, I'm curious. Not that you have to name names, but
I really try not to think that way because I think one of the main issues or the main, I don't know, weapons one has in avoiding scams is simply to know that they're out there. And I
right.
think many writers, especially stepping into publishing for the first time, don't have any awareness of this incredible kind of shadowy underbelly of the publishing industry. And if you don't know that they're out there, it can seem, like you said, perfectly credible that somebody wants to feature you or that a well-known author might contact you out of the
Right.
blue. And it might not even seem that unusual that money is being demanded for because, especially if you've self-published, that's a service industry where an exchange of money is common
Sure.
and normal. So I try not to think, they should have known better.
Right. No. And
I
I mean, I think,
try, I try always to be understanding and compassionate.
and I agree. I mean, I think one of the things you always hear when you're talking to people who work in this space is also how one of the biggest weapons that scammers have is the embarrassment of their victims, that people don't want to come forward and say, I was an idiot and did this. And that, protects them. So, I mean, I totally agree. I didn't mean it from that perspective. I meant it more in the sense that, like, you were talking about how this has become a larger issue across a broader swath of the literary community. And I'm curious, like, are there people sort of at a level where you would think nobody's going to try to scam that person, they're too well known or something like that? Or has it become just like everybody now is looking?
Everybody is a target now. And, there have been separate waves of scams. Most of the scams now that are targeting English-speaking writers come from overseas. And this has been true for maybe 6 or 8 years. But most of those scams focused on self-published authors. Just in the past, I would say, year and a half, there's been this new wave of really completely AI-driven scams where you get emails that are full of details about your book, full of praise, seem very authentic, but are just completely artificially created. And these scams, I've only ever published traditionally.
Right.
So I never got the email scam solicitations that were, going out to self-published authors. But now, every day practically I get something.
Yeah.
So this new wave of scams, of AI-driven scams, is really targeting everybody. And I'm hearing from everybody from, first-time self-publishers to traditionally published writers whose books haven't even been published yet,
Right.
to really well-known writers who've gotten these emails and are being, and it's not just one. If you get on one of these scam lists, you're going to receive dozens.
Sure. Yeah. No. I mean, I know I'm not self-published either, and I have one chapbook, literally, which is not usually the thing that attracts that much attention, and I'm getting at least one or two a week at the moment. I mean, I probably more that I don't even see. You know what I mean? But
yeah, it's crazy. And what can be amusing also is the mistakes. I mean, the AI agents are scraping the internet and, who knows what all to gather these addresses, and they screw up.
yeah.
You get solicitations for authors with different names, books.
Yeah, no, I get things. I got something today that was like somebody contacting me, and they're like, "We want to invite you to an event," and they named the book, and it was a book I've never heard of. I'm like, "This is not me."
Yeah. I saw one today addressed to Dear Jane, and it was for Pride and Prejudice.
Oh my!
So even
Well, you have had
authors.
quite a career. It's finally about time.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. And,
That's quite the scam. Yeah, classic scamming.
But I think that in a way, the scammers are undercutting themselves by being so aggressive and sloppy. Because if you get one of these, maybe you don't recognize it
Right.
as a scam. But if you get 10 of them, and they're all posing similar things,
it's interesting. I remember years ago hearing something that was very interesting, and I don't know it's exactly the same, but it seems related, where when they were doing like the old Nigerian prince scams and things like that, they said that they didn't correct the emails, the grammar and everything, because they wanted people who were dumb enough that they didn't pick up on the fact that it was badly written in a way that like gave away that it was clearly like inauthentic. And because they're sort of self-selecting for people who aren't paying attention.
Yeah, I've always been kind of skeptical of that because many of these scams are very elaborate and well constructed. And of course, one of the things about AI is that it can write perfect English.
Sure.
So, kind of those mistakes aren't there. I mean, prior to, I've been getting scam complaints for years.
Sure.
And the ones from overseas, originally when I first started tracking them, they all contained grammar and syntax errors. So that was always a marker. But once ChatGPT was introduced, almost immediately I started seeing a switch now with these perfectly grammatical approaches. So that marker, which used to be a way of identifying scams, has mostly been lost.
So I am curious what are the things you tell people to look out for now in this you were talking about how, the writing was often a marker. I'm sure there are aspects of the writing that if you look at AI writing after a little bit, you start to go, oh, this all looks the same. But but in general, I mean, is it more? I mean, it seems to me like it's probably more the like this is too good to be true of it.
Yeah, and I mean, with this current wave of AI scams, they almost all come from Gmail addresses. So if you're getting something that's supposedly from a major conference or a radio station asking for an interview or a famous author, it would more logically come from a company or personal web domain, not a Gmail address. So Gmail addresses can be a marker. The kind of extreme personalization and flattery in these often very lengthy emails, that's a marker. More generally, asking for fees where it's not normal to charge them. For instance, book clubs don't charge fees to their guests. Literary conferences don't invite you and then expect you to pay hundreds of dollars. So, and also, even more generally, reputable people and companies don't generally cold call authors. So, it's possible that a literary agent, for instance, might contact you out of the blue, but it's very rare. Whereas
if you have, if you were just
scammers,
published in one story or something like that, I guess that happens. But
Right. And then they'll have, there will be other markers of authenticity. But for scammers, this kind of direct solicitation is the main way that they acquire clients. So just the fact that you're getting something out of the blue, inviting you to something or offering you something, is a signal that you should be very careful and do a lot of checking. And most of the time, it will turn out to be a scam. The real diabolical nature of all of this is that the one time that it's not a scam, because you've been so deluged with scams, you might miss that one authentic contact. So it's really awful, and it's really terrible that writers need to be so suspicious and do so much checking and not take anything on face value. But that's the world we live in now.
Yeah, it is sad. I think that's a good point to make. I was also going to mention, I was shocked when we started talking about this podcast, how many scams there actually are and how sophisticated they are, how people even build websites to look like publishing houses, and they go to great lengths to really to I guess you'd say to be crooks. I mean, to a certain extent. And then we have our Melissa. One of the things Melissa does for us is due diligence. So Melissa, I was going to ask you, like, what are some of the signs that you also have that because you answer us pretty quickly when we ask you, like, is this for real? And you get back to us. So tell us some of the things you look for, during your due diligence with Harriet, our cyber person.
Yeah, like a lot of times there'll be two first names. It's like Jonathan James, and things like of that nature where it's kind of hard to track them down as even like a real person. And it's like everything you kind of like look up in the email address, and all of it points to nothing. And sometimes what they're trying to represent is like a valid, literary, publication or, contest or etc. But it's not coming from them directly. It's coming from, the outside scam source that's trying to, make you think that, they're affiliated with them, and, they're affiliated, in no way. So there's a lot of those going on.
Yeah, the name thing, or the names are weird. I saw one just the other day from Judy Chinatown. So that's a clue. Often, if the scammer has a website, reverse image searches can be helpful because if they post an image of the supposed marketer, it might turn out to be a stock image. In fact, it often does. Double checking the email address if it purports to be from a real organization, like a literary agency or publisher. Often the email addresses are like one or two letters off the real address, or they add the word agency or something like that. So double checking the email address. If they're impersonating an agent or publisher, if you visit the real websites, you'll see fraud warnings. Increasingly, agents and publishers are posting fraud warnings on their websites, and they're often willing to respond if you contact them to double check to see if something is authentic. Because they're very aware of this kind of wave of impersonation scams. Also, if somebody appears to be inviting you to a book club, but they want $200 as a appearance fee, that's a scam. Real book clubs, don't charge fees to their guests. So look for fees where they aren't commonplace. Be wary of solicitations. Gmail addresses are a warning sign, and just pay attention to your gut instinct, because, often it just won't seem, it's like this uncanny valley that scammers inhabit. It just won't seem quite right. So pay attention to that instinct.
A good point. But some people are so anxious and so eager to get the attention, they might not be as. I know I was going to ask you. Yeah,
that's true.
But they have to be.
I often hear from people who've gotten into trouble that way. Yeah. All anyone can do is to put the warnings out there, put the information out there, urge people to be careful, and then hope that they will be, because there will always be people who fall into the trap. And that's what the scammers count on, because their business is built on volume. For every 99 people who figure out it's a scam, there's going to be one who doesn't. I was
going to say yes.
I think the inoculation really is exposure. And what I mean by that is that, like, I know that when I saw the first one of these things come in, I did get excited. I was like, this looks like something real, and it looks exciting, and it looks like, and I mean, if I look at it now, I can see all the ways in which it was sort of a house of cards, even from just the start of it, even just reading the initial email, you can look at it and go, yeah, this kind of reads like they're trying to scam me. They're trying to sell me on something that, if it was a real opportunity, they wouldn't need to be selling me this hard and things like that, but once you see it and once you know what it is, the next one doesn't look the same to you. You know what I mean? So I think it's that awareness.
Right. You're less vulnerable at that point, maybe, perhaps. And that's the vulnerability that they look for. And in all kinds of scams, it's very interesting. And so writers beware. That's what is it exactly your organization does exactly?
We were founded to track and warn about literary scams. We say schemes, scams, and pitfalls, which aren't all necessarily the same thing, and try and put warnings out there and educate writers to be more self-protected and more knowledgeable. So we have a website which is a compendium of general warnings and information about literary agents, vanity publishers, self-publishing, a whole variety of topics where scams and schemes can happen.
Right.
I maintain the Writer Beware blog, where I write about, the latest scam that is or the latest permutation of an existing scam, but also.
And wait, before you go on, what's the website for the blog so our listeners can find it?
The website is writerbeware.com, and the blog is writerbeware.blog. So it's pretty easy to remember. The blog doesn't just cover scams. We cover all kinds of items of interest to writers, publishing contract clauses, copyright issues, developments in the publishing industry. We've been paying a lot of attention to AI, not just in the context of scams, but how it's affecting writing and publishing. So we are really more than just a scam tracking organization.
Great. You're a resource for quite a few things, especially AI now with rights. We had a podcast about that, how people's rights, writers' rights, have to be very careful these days. People might be giving things away they don't even know they're giving away.
Right.
It's wonderful that you're doing your work. And I can't believe you've been doing it since 1998. Good for you. Talk about foresight. Wow. You knew it was coming. It's good that you were so, attentive to those needs.
I think what's scarier is not that you knew it was coming, but that it was already dawning way back then. And now it's just exploded.
I don't think back at the beginning I could ever have imagined the kind of environment we're in now.
Right.
It's worse now than it has ever been, and that is saying something. When people ask what I do, in addition to being an author, and I say I track fraud in the publishing industry, and they're like, how bad can that be? I say, you'd be surprised.
I mean,
right. That's interesting. For sure.
I wanted to ask you, Victoria, what are your recommendations for people who find that they are being, caught up in something? If you find yourself, you've stepped a little, off the beaten path, the path, and you know what I mean?
Yeah. First of all, don't be afraid to back out. If it's a scam, you don't owe them an explanation. You don't owe them anything. Just end it and cut off contact. That's a lot more difficult if the scammer has actually published your book. And then there are limited resources. You can try and get the scammer to remove your book from publication, but often at that point they cut off contact. So the deeper you get into the scam, the more limited your resources are. I always advise people to dispute the charges. If they paid by credit card, even if they're way past the window for doing so, because banks and credit card companies are often willing to work with fraud victims. You should never, ever pay with a wire transfer, which is popular among scammers for the exact reason that it can't be reversed. That way your money is just gone forever. There are places that you can report a scam. It may or may not make a difference, but it can. There was recently a fairly high-profile federal bust of a major publishing scammer from the Philippines, and that was based entirely on writers reporting to the FBI what happened to them. So it's always worth filing a report if you've been scammed. Last but not least, contact Writer Beware. Our email is beware@sfwa.org. And if, I can maybe give you advice. If nothing else, I can confirm that something is a scam if you're not sure. And I'll give what advice I can. Oh, and I forgot to say, if you're a member of a writers organization such as SFWA or the Authors Guild, they may have legal resources that can help you or give you advice. So, yeah, there are things you can do, but the deeper you get into the scam, the more limited your options are.
Good advice. And I'm really happy you listed those resources and people can contact you too. I was wondering if there's a place you can report scams so people are aware this is a scam.
Yeah, I recommend the FBI, the office that's local to the scammer, or at least the scammer's business address, even if it's fake. The Internet Crime Center, the Better Business Bureau, which really can't do anything to intervene, but it does publicly post complaints. So writers who are checking may see them. I have a list that I send to people if they ask, with links. And there's also a page on the Writer Beware website of legal resources, which includes a list of places you can contact to report
Wonderful.
the scam.
So now I'm curious, for you doing this, what has been sort of the most rewarding aspect of this work, considering just how, much of a slog it really seems to be?
I would be lying if I said that I wasn't continually fascinated by the machinations and psychology of scammers. I mean, it just continues to be fascinating to me, the contortions they go through and the new varieties of scam and the way that they exploit writers' psychology. But for me, the really rewarding thing is, I guess, saving people. I mean, that sounds grandiose, but if someone can write to me and say, hey, I just heard from this publisher, they want to publish me, but they also want me to pay $15,000 for marketing, and I can give them information that heads them off from losing that money. That really is the most rewarding thing for me, feeling like I really have helped somebody avoid a bad situation. Or sometimes when people contact me and they've been scammed and I give them advice that works, that's a really, really good feeling.
Right.
It's wonderful that you do that. Have you ever thought about writing a book about it, or have you written a book about it?
No, and the reason is that the scams develop and change so rapidly that anything that I wrote would be out of date almost as soon as I published it. So I feel that the resources that Writer Beware offers, which kind of change and warn about things in real time, I feel that is more productive than a book that would just be obsolete as soon as I put it out there.
Well, I love when you said the psychology, because I thought that, the psychology of a scammer. I mean, can you imagine? And I think that's a big part of it. That's really a deep part of it. A human being that pretends to be an author, pretends to be a publisher, takes money from people, knowing that they're going to be pretty much stealing the money and not doing the work. The psychology of a scammer. I mean, who knows? what
Yeah,
they're
and in the past, scammers were actual people and real individuals, even if they were just sales reps in a boiler room. But now that you have these AI scams, it's like a machine has been programmed to tap into writers' psychology. I mean, there are people running these AI scams. My theory is that it's a relatively small number of people running thousands of email accounts and emails simultaneously. But the AI has been, the AI structure of these scams has been created to tap into writer's psychology. So in addition to all the other issues with AI psychosis, etc., we now have machines that are tapping into writer's psychology.
And I mean, I'm sure, in the last few months with the advent of these sort of independent agents, you know what I'm talking about, where like you can program an AI with a task
Right.
and say to it, go out and do this, that if you program an AI and say, target this writer and until they fall for a scam, that thing's going to keep
Right.
going until,
And that's why, these AI scammers are willing to exchange like infinite emails. I mean, I've seen exchanges of 20 or more emails before they finally get to the point of broaching money. And I am interacting with these scammers myself to try and get all the way through the process to the payment point, to collect payment information. And sometimes it's an Upwork account, but more often it's a bank account that they want you to wire money to. And that's one way I've been able to track these AI scams to Nigeria, because it's almost always a Nigerian third-party operator who's the recipient of the money. And they like Wells Fargo Bank and they like Lead Bank in Kansas City. I see those two banks over and over and over again. So what I'm also doing is contacting the banks and
right.
reporting fraud and hopefully getting the account shut down.
No, they're not very responsive.
Wells Fargo at least sends you an auto response, but I was dealing with one scammer where I reported them, and shortly after I reported them, they contacted me to let me know that their bank account wasn't working anymore and they had a new payment nexus for me to use. So I think maybe it does have an effect.
Well, that's good.
It's like whack-a-mole, though. I mean,
Yeah, no, it sounds like this is just an ever growing kind of field of difficulty in many ways, especially right now.
I think that the current wave of AI scams is gonna peak because at a certain point, they run out of victims, or they just have been so aggressive that everybody knows. I mean, I would say, in addition to being the most prolific wave of scams I've ever seen, it's also the scam that has gotten the most attention and exposure in the writing community. With the articles and so on and the blog posts that you mentioned in the beginning, writers are speaking out about this. So the knowledge is out there in a way that it hasn't been in the past. In the past, Writer Beware was like the only resource discussing certain scams, but that's changing. So I think the scams will reach a peak and cease to become profitable, at which point we'll get some new paradigm.
Right. So I am curious. I know Denise asked you about writing specifically about scams, but I'm curious how this experience, how learning about these things might have percolated into your other writing. Because I know as a fiction writer, I mean, you're always looking for, things that you know what I'm talking about. There's always those details of the real world that find their way into a plot somewhere.
I would say no. I mean, because, I try to keep a kind of a wall between what I do in real life and what I do as a writer, with building imaginary worlds. And I can't say that I would never incorporate aspects of this, but I'm sure that it informs my writing, but not literally.
Right.
More like kind of enhancing my understanding of human nature, I would say.
Yeah. We don't want you falling in love with the scammer. You catch the scammer and then you run off with the scammer.
or you plan their death in some kind of elaborate and extremely painful way.
Yeah. They drown in some Mississippi River accidentally. Interesting. To anybody else? Melissa, do you have anything else you want to ask, or Maggie? Since we have a little bit of time left, just a tiny bits.
Yeah, I was curious about, I know that you mentioned, I checked your website, and on your blog, not the one for Writer Be Aware, but on your own blog, you have one article that is about the impatience of writers. And I think my question is, we spoke about that, but would you say impatience is one of the biggest struggles that writers have, of like they want to get their work out there, a new writer, of course, and so would you say this is one of the biggest reasons why someone would just fall into a scam trap of publishing their book?
I would say it's an important component. I often hear from writers who figure they can just kind of jump in, whether it's self-publishing or querying literary agents, and kind of learn on the fly. And that, I think, that kind of impatience to get out there and just to do it without spending the kind of tedious hours of, researching the industry. So you know what the protocols are, what the the norms are. I would say that definitely contributes to writers getting into bad situations. I mean, not just necessarily with scams, because, oops, sorry about that. There are all kinds of traps that writers can fall into. Small press publishing is an area where there's a lot of kind of irregularity and, ethical and logistical issues, and not necessarily scams, but just publishers that aren't necessarily very expert, or have bad contract clauses. So if you,
I think
if you don't have at least some overview of publishing before you jump into it, you can get into a bad situation through no fault of your own.
And I think that's even true when the publisher may have, good intentions, and it's just that you're at cross purposes. I know that early on, a little before I found the publisher who did publish Blaze Without Burning, my chapbook, I'd received an offer from another publisher who is a very good publisher and publishes beautiful books, but they're really interested in a very small kind of boutique run that they're doing more as like an art project than they are for, to sort of build a large, following or to build an audience for a writer. They're doing it from a very genuine place. But they were like, when we tried to talk about it, it just was not a match in terms of like my goals for the book and what they felt capable of doing. And if we hadn't had that conversation, at early on, which, if I'm honest, was not even my idea. It was something that I was pushed into by Denise and my team here. And, I would not have thought about that, even as someone who, has been, as much as I don't have a book until now, I've been in the writing world for a long time. I got my MFA, 20 something years ago at this point. So it's not, I think, just, scams. It's, having an awareness of that. And I think, you talked about impatience, and I think, one of the problems that a lot of people, especially people who become writers later in life, have is that writing is something we've done our whole life, and it doesn't really feel necessarily like being a writer is different than just writing in a lot of people's minds,
Mm-hmm.
And so you have this thing of like, well, I know how to write, and it's like you know how to write, but you don't know how to be an author. That's a different skill set. And you may not know how to write anyway. That's a whole different question. But you certainly don't have that authorship.
The difference between the writing and the business of writing.
Yeah.
And the business of writing part is where writers get into trouble. And writers need not to be afraid to ask questions and to advocate for themselves. And I think many, especially newer writers, are just, bowled over by the excitement of being recognized, especially if they've been, trying for a long time for that kind of recognition. And they don't ask enough questions. They don't engage in dialogue the way you did. I mean, that's important too. But it's really hard to advocate for yourself, especially in creative fields where you may not feel deserving. It's writer psychology. It's very complicated.
Yeah, the psychology of the writer.
I spend a lot of time telling writers to stick up for themselves and to advocate for themselves, but I have a really hard time doing that for myself. I hate being confrontational.
That's interesting. We actually have a podcast we did with Will about, it's called Braggalicious, because he was like kind of getting used to having to talk about himself and to have his work out there and people asking him questions. And it's a very, from being behind the scenes and kind of writing all the time and not being read and then being read, it's a big jump. And it is psychological to a certain extent. And I have a question for you, talking about what you're doing. What's the last book you wrote, and do you have another one you're working on?
The last book I wrote was published in 2014. It's the second book of my young adult historical duology about a girl who is struggling to be a painter in Renaissance Venice. I have more or less stopped writing fiction for reasons that, are personal and probably not relevant to discuss here. I don't know if I will write another book. I really don't want to get into that.
Okay, but can I ask you the title of the last book that you wrote in 2014 about the painter in Venice?
It's called Color Song, and the previous book is called Passion Blue. So it's it's a historical duology for young adults, but like much young adult fiction, I think adult readers can read and enjoy.
Oh, interesting. Thank you. Great conversation.
Well, I mean, first of all, I do want to thank you, of course, for joining us. I'm also, before we sign off, I'm wondering if there's any final bit of wisdom you would impart to our readers or listeners. I mean,
knowledge. Be an educated writer. Knowledge is your greatest ally and your best defense. Before you start trying to get published, research the field. Know what you're getting into. I know it's difficult. Publishing is a secretive discipline, and there are, as many opinions as there are writers. But the more you know about how things should work, the better equipped you'll be to recognize bad situations if and when you encounter them. So don't just jump in. Spend some time learning about the field before you enter it.
And I'm sure if they go to your website, you have some good resources listed there for people as they begin that journey.
I do indeed, and that's the writeverwhere.com website. And then if you want to keep up to date with the latest scams, it's writeverwhere.blog.
Great. I have one more question. While we were talking, it was quite lovely. I saw two kitties walking up the steps behind you. What are their names? They were like listening and watching. I think they want to make sure you're okay. Like, it was cute.
The black one is named Sarah.
Sarah.
She was sitting
on. Yeah.
Sometimes she jumps in front of my monitor, but she decided not to do that today. And the white and tabby one is named Emily.
Emily, Sarah and Emily. It was nice. We got a small appearance from them. It was quite lovely to watch them. And they were looking at you. I don't know if you can see William's
I'm wearing
right now.
That's Not Guns t-shirt.
Yeah.
It's a little hard to see at the moment, I think, but it's a picture of a big cat.
Yeah. And it says cats, not guns, which is 100%.
Yeah, I agree.
A good thing. Yeah. Awesome. Maggie, thank you for organizing this. Awesome.
Thank you. And thank you for agreeing to, talk to us. And I definitely, if I was a, upcoming author, I've learned a lot. And the bit of asking questions and being informed is really important. So thank you for, taking the time.
Well, thank you.
Important work.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Victoria Strauss.
And I'm sure that there'll come a time when we need to ask you about some new kind of scam in the future, because this is such a weird growing field, but I really do appreciate all of the insight you gave us, and I feel like hopefully our readers feel a little bit more prepared for, or our listeners. I keep saying readers. I don't know why. My brain is in the wrong mode.
They read and they listen. They do both, maybe.
Well, anyway, anyone who pays attention to this episode, I hope will walk away feeling prepared and a bit more informed about how they can protect themselves.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Everybody take care. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.
ARG, Not Another Podcast, is produced by Denise Marsa, Maggie Dimitrova, and William May. Please visit WilliamMayWrites.com for social media links, recited poems, and more.